Siberia, 1988. I'm sitting at home because it's 9 p.m. At this time, all teenage boys are at home. Going outside without adult supervision is forbidden. There is a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. for all boys in the city. The reason? Frequent murders caused by clashes between street gangs. During that period, there was a widespread craze across the USSR among teenagers, gathering in groups to commit robberies, extortion, and fights with strangers from other districts and neighboring streets in the same city. Most of the young Soviet generation was filled with anger, aggression toward outsiders, and a kind of prison romance. The only exceptions in the country were two cities, Moscow and Leningrad. But that didn't stop gangs from neighboring towns coming there to commit robberies and thefts. In my teenage years, I was also attacked several times. Sometimes to take my clothes, and sometimes just to practice boxing punches on me like a punching bag. Unfortunately, there are places on our planet where people live mostly in an atmosphere of hatred and destructive thoughts. And, by my observation, not only people show aggressive behavior there, but dogs as well. All fighting dogs in Russia are ready to attack anyone they meet, unlike the same breeds of dogs in Central Europe, which freely roam without muzzle. And what about the countless videos of driver fights on Russian roads? There is no such wildness in other countries. Now I'll add a few words about the ecology of my hometown. If you don't notice it in the summer, then with the arrival of winter, you can see how the white snow becomes gray in a couple of days because of the large amount of coal soot in the air. It's funny to remember a woman who came to visit our city. She walked the streets, took a bus, and when she returned to a friend's house, she asked, "Why are there so many gay men in your city? Why do you think so?" The locals asked her, "Well, most men have painted eyelashes." This caused great laughter among the locals. The reason for the painted eyelashes in men is working in the coal mines. They work directly in coal extraction, and they don't rub their eyes and the delicate skin around them with a sponge and soap, unlike the rest of the body. So coal dust constantly settles on their eyelashes, giving the effect of mascara-coated lashes. A typical biography of a local resident. He finished school, served 2 years in the army. After the army, served a prison sentence from 2 to 6 years for theft and hooliganism. Got out, married, and went to work in the coal mine, and if he was lucky, lived to retirement, after which he died a couple of years later from chronic alcoholism. Let me go back to that evening when I was sitting alone at home. I was 15, lying on the couch in my room listening to Kings of Metal by the American band Manowar on my tape recorder. And there I was, a young pioneer, an atheist, in an almost meditative state, deeply feeling the hopelessness of my dull existence when I turned to God. God, why was I born in this hole? Not only was I born in the USSR, but also in Siberia, and on top of that in a small mining town I can't escape, or I'll have to drag out my miserable life. Why? Why couldn't I have been born in America? The richest, most beautiful, happiest country on earth. The country where the president is a former actor, Ronald Reagan, where they make jeans, chewing gum, Coca-Cola, where the best movies and rock bands come from. Though of course, I'm reaching too high. That paradise on earth isn't for everyone. Why? Why couldn't I at least have been born in Germany? To hell with it. I wouldn't even mind being a girl. But in Germany, at least then I'd be a 15-year-old girl now. But born in the meticulously clean and orderly land of Germany. And right then I caught myself thinking, what the hell kind of nonsense is this? A girl, when all around me is prison romance and the typical life path I've described. That evening I poured out my feelings with such force and emotion, and then immediately, completely forgot about that outburst, never once thinking about it again. 30 years passed. Some of my former classmates, who had become quite successful, decided to organize a reunion, and not just anywhere, but in Paris. There were 8 of us, 8 classmates, all born in Siberia, gathered in Paris to celebrate their reunion. After Paris, we traveled to visit some of our classmates in Germany. We arrived late at night. They put me up in the attic room of their house. It belonged to their 15-year-old daughter, who had gone away to study in another city. Her room was empty, and I, tired from the long road, quickly fell asleep. At 6 in the morning, I woke to heavy rain pounding against the skylight windows. When I opened my eyes and looked around, I realized I was in the room of a teenage girl. Pink everywhere, posters on the walls, wallpaper, curtains, the bedspread. And in that very instant a memory surfaced. 30 years ago I'd asked God, to hell with it, I wouldn't even mind being a girl. But in Germany, and thus 3 decades on, a man of 45 finally opened his eyes in a room tinted with soft rose hues, somewhere in Germany. What a strange irony of fate. But hidden in that irony was an unspoken answer to the question I once asked. Back then, Many years ago, it wasn't really a wish in the true sense, more like a moment of weakness, a spark of exhaustion and a bitter joke at my own expense. But even such a fleeting thought, torn from the heart, remains inside us, and somehow, in ways we can't understand, the world hears it. In that moment, I realized a simple yet profound truth. A thought is not just a sound in your head, it's a direction of movement. Even if we forget what we once said or thought, it leaves a trace inside us, a barely visible path that might one day lead us somewhere we never imagined going. And then, after decades, you wake up in a house, in a foreign but once desired country, in a child's pink atmosphere, and you see around you the answer to that old question you'd long since forgotten. And then you understand, everything in life is connected, everything has its root and its trace. All it takes is to allow yourself to think, even silly thoughts, even strange ones, even the ones you might laugh at later, because a thought, even a random one, is life in motion. And motion, in the end, always leads us to discoveries, to changes, to something greater than we could ever imagine. Maybe that's where the true strength of a person lies, in the ability to once say something bold to the world, and then, one day, wake up and realize the world is answered, and the world gives you exactly what you've long been hoping to receive.